Well, welcome, McKenna, to the Next Thing Now podcast. It's great to see
Thank you. Thank you.
you. So, thanks for joining me today. You are obviously an award-winning head of people and culture, and now a keynote conference speaker. So let's start there. How was the conference? Tell me all about it. How'd it go?
The conference was amazing. It was about 10 months ago. I was asked to speak at the conference, and it was at the back of a blog that I'd done where I was talking about mental health in the workplace and grief. And it's not really a topic very many HR people talk about, but because it's personal to me and I've had personal experience, and also it's led into my HR journey. So I was asked to come in and speak, and it was great. It was nerve-wracking. It's the first time I've ever spoken in front of that many people. There were about 260 of us. And it was also a completely different HR event where you didn't have your usual stand selling your HR systems and trying to sell you mental health apps and that sort of thing. It was purely about talking about our personal experiences and professional experiences. And it was an incredible day. Very emotional. It took me about 3 days to recover. In fact, I think I'm still recovering. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
amazing. And that was also at the back of the award I'd won, the most inspiring HR leader of the year award. So yeah, all good things in the
Wow.
last year.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, is this going to be the start of a long train of events you're going to do now? Are you going to be jet setting, international speaker?
Absolutely. I've
It did look like
never
quite a cool event.
Oh, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I think I found my tribe. It was real human type HR people. And some of the speakers were just completely raw. There were lots of tears. There was lots of hugging, lots of swearing. But yeah, it was amazing.
Brilliant. So, yes, obviously you are head of people and culture at Dietrich's, and this is how our paths have crossed. What led you down this road? You've had a winding journey to get to where you are today. What's some of the highlights?
I have, yes. I know this is going to sound cheesy, but I did fall into HR. I was fortunate enough to work for a law firm for about 6 years, and I was told at the time by the senior employment law partner, anybody can do HR, but we need somebody who's going to come in and drive the culture forward. And that was 15 years ago, where culture wasn't really spoken about in HR roles. It was all about, policies and procedures of navigating grievances and redundancies. And I wanted to join HR to make a difference. And for the first sort of 10 years, I guess, yes, I made a difference, but it was very much personnel focused. And then we moved to HR, and I've heard all the jokes about what HR stands for. But I wanted to change the perception of HR people. And the pandemic hit. It was tough for a lot of people. It was tough on HR people. Burnout was real. And it was at that time that I thought, you know what, HR is not for me. I'm out. That's it. I'm done. And I left HR. And I went and I did care work. And I did that full time. But that gave me a completely different perspective on people. And, everybody's carrying something from our day-to-day teams right up to our CEOs and founders. And I decided at that point my HR journey is not done, and I returned. But I made a conscious effort that I only want to work with companies who are purpose-led and who have culture at the heart of their strategy. Which then led me to Dietrich's. And it was interesting because it was the first HR role that from interview to offer, was about a week and a half. And I thought, yes, this is the company I want to work for. And you talked a lot about your
It's such
culture,
an
and I
obvious
told them,
choice. That's my hand.
well, it was, of course. I mean, you and Kev sold it to me. Just talking about the culture that you guys had developed, and that was without an HR function, and it was without some of the key functions that you guys have recruited into Dutrex over the last couple of years. But it was intimidating. It was really intimidating because it was like being asked to ice a cake that already tastes good because the culture was already there. I wasn't coming in and starting something new. I was building on what you guys had already put in place. And, lots of people talk about culture. We're all about culture. We're all about our people. And then you join and you think, is it really? Is it though? And at Dutrex, it really was. Just speaking to everybody, the culture is incredible. I think we can do more. We can absolutely do more.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, the focus there is on people, and your background outside of HR, your interlude into caring was obviously very focused on people. The word HR is almost, they're almost like a dirty word, really now. Isn't that? No one really talks about HR, at least not in my circles. People talk about people and culture, and what is that a universal shift? How is that actually out in the wider kind of HR community? How is that perceived?
So I think the pandemic definitely shifted what HR meant to companies and started shifting to more people and culture focus. I guess they started realizing, you know what, we do need to be thinking about the culture. We do need to be talking about mental health. We do need to be talking about grief in the workplace, especially at the back of the COVID pandemic. But there's a lot of companies who still haven't adopted people and culture. It's still HR. And within my network, I see this almost on a daily basis where people and culture functions are asking, what is the shift in your businesses where you've moved from HR advisor, HR business partner to the people function? And a lot of companies are still pushing back and they see it as it's fluffy. If we have a people and culture person, it's not really an HR function. So it's not universal. I think a lot of the big corporate organizations still refer to us as HR, but I definitely think that it is people and culture because ultimately that's our business, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, at its heart, we're a people business, right? So, a professional services business is all about the people. Without the people, we don't have a business at the moment. So
Well,
that's certainly true. I think the way I've always seen it is HR is traditionally aligned to legal and finance and payroll and compliance and all that kind of stuff. But the shift, it's almost more aligned now to maybe marketing. Is that kind of the closest you
yes.
get? It's kind of lots of internal messaging. It's about communication. It's about obviously there's training involved in that and how you do coaching and that kind of thing as well. So it does seem to have shifted away from compliance, which is obviously still an important part of it, but really about building up the individuals and where individuals are
Yeah.
on their own personal journey as much as on the business journey as well.
Absolutely. We're no longer the policy police, which I think back in the day when we were called personnel, and that was a long time ago, we were just the policy police. But the perception hasn't changed. So although the function has evolved, but the perception is still we're the hirers and firers. We the ones who make the decisions for line managers. And I see it all too often where people hide behind HR and it's like, HR said you can't do this, and HR said you can't do that, and HR made you redundant, and HR fired you. Well, unless you're reporting to me, I didn't fire you. So that perception is still very, very real.
Yeah. So how does this? Obviously, what we generally talk about on this particular segment is what's happening in the future of technology and how that's impacting all of us, not just at work, but everything day to day. AI is a significant change. Obviously, we
Yeah.
feel that we're in the early stages of it now. How we've made our feelings pretty clear. This is an existential change. This is going to have significant societal and economic changes. It's going to impact all of us, come what may. How does that impact a people first role when you've got the rise of the machines? What's going on both in terms of kind of how you see it, I suppose, and but also the wider community? Because as we said, you're really well plugged into kind of the broader HR community.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier that without people, we don't have a business. I do think on the ground, employees are kind of thinking, well, you could run the business without us, so AI is going to come in and replace my job. And that's
So you
really
think
the
that's a
biggest.
genuine people are actually concerned about this? You think they're really on the ground? People are worried that the AI is going to replace their job.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of anxiety around, is my job safe? Is an an AI bot going to come in and take my job? And some people are genuinely worried that the chat GPT is gunning for their job. It's interesting because these people are using AI tools, but they're still scared of the fact that AI is going to come in and replace them. And if we look at developers, they're potentially navigating in a bit of limbo. AI is speeding up their work, but it's also subtly changing what they work on. And it might raise questions around skill erosion and long-term relevance. So what is their role going to look like in the next 5 years? Is it going to be a mobile engineer? Is it going to be a cloud engineer? Or is it going to be something completely different? And the other thing that I'm kind of seeing is the pace of change. It's exhausting. The pressure to keep up or you're going to get left behind. It's real, but it's also unsustainable. So I'm still hearing the word burnout, and I'm quite surprised that with AI and the automations that we could be using, and it is, I mean, I'm all for automation, especially in my role. But I think burnout is still real, and it's, how we navigate that change and bring our teams along that journey, and not just
Mm.
assuming because they're technical experts, they're just going to get it and they're just going to understand. Because at the end of the day, they're still humans, and they're still humans doing the work alongside AI.
What do you think is driving that sense of anxiety? I suppose that because yes, the world is changing very fast, but is it kind of the external pressures, the kind of the seeing the new technologies coming out? Is it the news? Is it company leadership? I mean, we've been pretty vocal about the pace of change. Are we driving that anxiety? Is it business leaders that are doing it? Kind of what's the mix of that? Do you think?
I think, yeah, there is a mix of we're driving that change, and we know that this is exactly what we should be doing. Otherwise, we're going to get left behind. But I think it's probably the communication around how we take people on that journey. But the other thing that I think is probably driving it is there's going to be identity shifts, and the trust gaps between business leaders and employees. And the trust is, are you telling me my job is safe, but we're installing 6 AI tools in the background that's potentially going to replace their role? So it's building that trust within the business that there's a reason for this journey, and we want you to come on that journey. In many cases, the responses, the emotional response is very real. There is a lot of curiosity, but there's also fear. Everybody's talking about AI, but I think it definitely starts with the leadership and how we communicate and how we bring our teams on that journey. People want to feel safe. They want to feel seen.
I'm interested to know, I think, whether or not individuals feel like this is happening to them or whether they have any sense of agency around their own role in this change. Because there's a sense that this is changing around all of us, right? This is happening to all of us. But
Yes.
obviously the way we respond and react and change our direction, what we learn, what we choose to ignore, all that kind of stuff. We have our own responses to that. What's the overriding feel from the wider community? Do people feel like this is happening to them?
I think I can speak definitely for us is I do think that our teams have agency, that feeling that it's not just being thrust upon them. I do think and I hope that they can voice their concerns, and they can voice the pace that we're moving. And that's not to say we're going to go, oh well, that's fine, we're going to put the brakes on things. We're going to continue to do it, but do they have a voice? But I think in a lot of organizations, especially bigger ones, where AI is potentially going to replace some roles, that's not the case at all. They come into work and we're all talking about AI, you see it in the news, it's real, we're all using ChatGPT, but are they being taken on that journey? And then it's almost like suddenly I don't have a job. And what am I going to do now? And then it's having to reskill or upskill in order to remain relevant. They absolutely do have a voice. But I think the thing we need to be mindful of is how much are we expecting them to do? And is burnout real within our organization?
Mm. So is that kind of your that's the canary in the coal mine, I suppose, is it? It's when you start to see absenteeism rise. Is that a signal more generally that there are cultural issues, irrespective of AI and change?
Yeah, absenteeism definitely. And with that is the mental health challenges that come with it as well. So it's keeping a finger on the pulse. And if somebody is struggling, we identify when they're struggling. And is it because of the workload? Is it because of the massive shift to AI? Or is it something else? And in general, a lot of the times it's something else, which is the stuff that I talk about, that not a lot of companies actually talk about, is what's happening in your personal life that's impacting your work. When we come to work, we're pretending. We're not always the same person that we are at work as we are at home. And in some cases, that's probably a good thing. But no, I think
I have to ask my wife. I don't know.
well, I think you should ask my husband as well. Oh, you're lucky I'm not crying on this podcast. But I think it's those pretending at work, and is it because they're pretending because they think they have to be this person at work, or is it because of outside factors? So although, our absenteeism is low, we can't ignore the fact that there are real life things happening outside of work. And it's not only because of AI. It's not only because the way the world of work is shifting.
Yeah, there's so many threads I could pull on there. I guess let me start with. I mean, you mentioned your children who are obviously younger than we are. Is there an age related component to the sense that how people are responding to the inevitable changes that are coming. Are people in their 20s reacting to differently to people in their 50s, say, or 40s? Is that real, or is it just across the board? Everyone's just struggling to know what to do.
And I definitely think there is a difference in the age dynamic. My perception when AI started becoming a thing, I thought, you know what, my kids are going to be on it. And the reason why I have an interest in IT stuff is so that I know what my kids are doing. But that's not even the case anymore. My son's 24, my daughter's 17. My daughter has no interest in AI. You talk to her about ChatGPT and she's like, how does this work? But my son, I would have expected him to have really, really been on this. And, when I talk to him about AI, he knows about it, but he's not worried about it. He's not worried that AI is going to take his job. He's not worried about what AI means. All he's concerned about is how can it make me more efficient at work and make me better than I am. But I think if we're looking at our age group, and I'm not going to say what my age is because I am older than you, but
30s.
absolutely, late 30s. But I do think people in our age group, it's very different because, we've seen so much change and shift in how people work. And then, if we're looking at those beyond sort of, in the mid, late 50s, what does this mean to them? A lot of them come with great leadership skills. They come with great experience. But if they're not keeping up with AI, are they going to be relevant anymore? Which then also leads into an HR issue. Is ageism then becoming an issue in the business, in the workplace? I mean, ageism, I think, has been an issue for a long time, but AI is potentially exacerbating the issue. I don't think the younger generation is that fussed about it. They're also not as loyal. So they tend to stay in businesses maybe 2, 3 years and then they move on. So for them, it's not about lifelong employment. It's not necessarily about the stability of employment. They want to go to work, some money so they can go, go to the next festival or travel or whatever it is. I definitely think there's an age shift with a new way of working and AI.
Because there's definitely, it feels like there are almost conflicting things there. You sort of touched on a little bit about the role of the organization, the employer, in developing the understanding what's going on with their employees outside of work and the impact that
Yeah,
has within work. But there's also, on the flip side of that, employees are not as loyal as they used to be. It's just a paycheck. They want to work and they want to get what they can get out of it and then go off and do their own thing afterwards. It
yeah,
feels like those two things are quite difficult to hold in tension, aren't they? Because I think there's been a general change in society about the big institutions have all crumbled and disappeared, right? People don't have big families anymore. People
yeah.
generally don't go to sports clubs anymore. Churches have disappeared, or religious institutions have disappeared, and they don't have the same place in the community anymore. People don't go to the local pub to hang out with all the people that live in the village anymore, or whatever. Those things where people would connect and build their sense of identity have by and large diminished, if they've not
Yeah.
evaporated. So there's a sense that work could really play a significant role in that. And I know a number of business leaders who really want to champion that, really put that at the heart of their culture, that kind of community building aspect. And you can kind of see why. But on the flip side, as you say, actually, that's maybe not what the employees are looking for. They just want to get paid and go off and do what they want to do. So how do you balance that tension?
So I think that's where the culture in the organization is important. The younger generation are more open about talking about their mental health, talking about neurodiversity, talking about all these things that's happening in the world that we probably weren't even aware of when we were their age. The younger generation have grown up with screens, so their lives are on their screens. They don't need to go to the pub because this is where their friends belong or live. And our generation, I like to go to the pub. I like to see people. I like to talk to people in real life. But I think this is where culture becomes really, really important. And how do we become a workplace where the younger generation and older generation want to work with Deutrix, even though, we're forward thinking, we're doing the next thing now. We are going with the shift, especially within the AI space. And it's what can we do for our current employees and attracting new people to want to come and work with us. And that's with the knowledge that they're not going to stay for probably longer than 2, 3 years, and that's okay. In the people function, we track attrition rates. That might not become an issue in the future. It's not that we're not going to care, but we're not going to be focusing on our turnover is really high because our turnover is going to be high. We are going to have constant new people joining and people leaving. But how do we become the workplace where people want to work with us and they want to stay and they want to be on the journey with us when we do the next thing now? And that's beyond AI. AI is going to get to a point where there's going to be something else. What is that something else? And how do we shift? And it's taking our team on the journey, but I do think that there's a huge cultural piece, and it's not just an agenda item. This is going to become our ecosystem, and this is going to be our bread and butter. Yes, all the new tools and technologies, but I think culture is going to play a much, much bigger role as businesses evolve.
So do you think then if a strong culture or a successful culture is a measure of success of HR, say, do you think how that's measured is changing or will change with the changes that the technology is bringing?
Absolutely, absolutely. At the moment, yes, we have employee surveys and satisfaction surveys and pulse surveys, and whilst it's important, that's now going to become outdated. There's going to be new ways where we can assess the pulse of our business, and AI is going to help us with that. So perhaps tracking conversations and Slack messages, which then create a triage system of we need to be keeping an eye on, Rob, because he's been communicating in GIFs for the last 7 days. He's not had a conversation with
I love a
anyone.
GIF.
I know, so do I. But so it is going to be the way we track it and what we're tracking is going to change. There's still going to be those metrics that's really important. But I think we need to be looking at what's the next thing now? How are we in the people function going to be tracking new metrics in a new way using the AI tools that's meaningful to our culture?
So yeah, okay. How does leadership development change then? So if it sounds like you're expecting broadly attrition levels to go up, right? And we've traditionally had a very good attrition level. People don't tend to leave to do tricks; they stay for a long time. It has positives and negatives, but generally people don't tend to leave. But I think I'm right in saying that attrition level is at the moment perceived to be a good indicator of how the business health is,
Yes.
right? So if you have a high attrition level, there's probably something you need to look at. But you're saying you're expecting more broadly the attrition levels to go up across organisations of various shapes and sizes. If that's true, how does leadership development work in a context where um, juniors are not, or juniors are harder to find a role for, maybe because there's a sense that maybe AI is taking junior roles, and the ones that do stay, or ones you do find roles for, they outgrow you more quickly, or they look for the next challenge more quickly. So how do you take people on a journey through an organisation?
So I think there's a couple of things there really is, as the juniors come up, and those juniors won't be juniors forever because they might be juniors in another organization. When they join us, they're probably mid-level. Our leadership, the way we lead our people needs to change. And it's not just going to be about drumming AI tools and expecting productivity and efficiency. Our leaders need to start being human. And it's not that they're not human now, but I think we need to focus on the real stuff, and it's going to be resilience. Resilience is going to be a massive factor. Emotional intelligence. When our line managers have one-to-ones, they don't need scripts. They don't need to be coached and taught how to speak to people because this is what we do. And when they're having a one-to-one, it's asking how you are, but actually asking the question. So it's not a statement. It's, how are you? And if you say, yeah, I'm fine, no, 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 how are you really? And it's having that conversation about that person before talking about let's dive into Q2 targets. Let's look at what's not going well. It's actually bringing the human back into those roles, and I think that's going to be really, really important. And when we have these juniors or mid levels, and they're coming into our business, they do talk about mental health more than maybe we did, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they're going to want leaders who understand and who are empathetic. And that's difficult. For me, I think it's just a natural thing. You ask somebody how they are, I can very quickly determine, well, actually, you're not okay, but also I can read the room and I know when to push and when not to push. But I think our leaders need to be adopting that kind of management style. But we need to be giving them the space and the tools to be able to be better leaders and, evolve in the leadership. So people don't need pressure. They don't need their line managers or, the leadership team pressuring them. What they need is partnership. Um, you know, when there's a challenge or a new AI tool or a new something, How are we going to do this together? That's leadership. Saying good luck, adapt or die, that's not leadership. The way the leadership landscape evolves, I think it's going to be focused on resilience and emotional intelligence for sure.
Interesting. Interesting. Because that is, again, it's linked to kind of the previous thing we talked about what the role of a business or an employer is in someone's life, right? Because again, you could argue, do you go to work to get a counsellor? Do you go to work to be understood, to realise that you're unique and special? Is that the role? Is just need to accept that is the role of a business now? That's what success looks like. Is that a healthy place to be, or is that just a consequence of the fact that the other pillars of society have crumbled away?
I think as a consequence, definitely. But also, I don't know if you've seen, you'll see on various platforms, people don't leave businesses, leave managers. And if you have a
Mm.
manager who's supportive and encouraging, and that's not just in a personal sense, that's in your professional sense, they're going to stay and they're going to be loyal. If I'm working for a leader who has no interest in anything that I do, has no interest in, my outside life as well as my professional life, am I going to stay? I probably won't. It's a two-way relationship. So whilst our leaders need to become more emotionally intelligent and resilient, our employees need to become more resilient. And that's where we come in, is to support them. That's what our benefits are for. We provide the tools for our employees to use, but definitely adapting to a more resilient workforce. That's our leaders and our employees. It's going to be a skill set that we need. If people aren't being given tools to reset and bounce back, we're going to be dealing with burnout.
It's such a hard thing, isn't it? I mean, things like resilience, they're like a poisonous word in some ways at the moment.
Yeah.
You can't suggest that people lack resilience, but sometimes that there is a resilience problem. That's a really difficult road to walk, isn't it? And I guess one that
Yeah.
must come up in the HR community a lot. It
Yeah.
must be a sense of frustration, because sometimes there are obvious issues outside of what's going on in front of you, but it must be difficult to know what you can call out and what you can't, and what's
Yeah.
your problem and what's not your problem, and that's all part of the mix. There must be some horror stories. Is that what happens at these HR conferences? You just get together and tell war stories. It's all completely
No,
anonymous, obviously.
no, we have an HR group for that. There are horror stories,
Brilliant.
there really are. And I think that's the other thing. So AI aside, the shift in how businesses work and how they manage their employees is becoming increasingly difficult with legislation changes. And, we're talking about one day rights coming in. So our leaders are going to have to be, stronger, emotionally intelligent, because they're going to have these difficult conversations. Yes, it's great, how are you? And, how can I support you? And that's the easy stuff. But when things start going wrong, how do we have those difficult conversations? And we absolutely should be having those difficult conversations, because that then impacts the culture, which then impacts productivity and efficiency, and it impacts the projects that we work on. So yes, it's a big, big subject, but I think we need to be providing our leaders and line managers with tools to be able to have two different types of conversations. So, checking in, the empathy, but it's also making the hard decisions when you need to, having those difficult conversations. And that's where the people function get a bad rap, because a lot of line managers don't have the confidence. So HR will do that, and they'll have the difficult conversation, and we become scapegoats. And it's my role
Mm.
to provide our line managers with the support and the coaching and the mentoring to be able to manage their teams themselves and be able to have those difficult conversations, because they're just as important as the emotional, empathetic conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, have you seen that change as well with, I guess, the rise, the prominence of remote working since COVID in particular? It's obviously you have less face time with people now, so that's trying to do these things through a screen is obviously is obviously challenging. But you
Yeah,
mentioned as well earlier with potential for ageism, as the technology comes through. But we've seen all sorts of isms potentially come through as a result of remote working. I mean, one I like to talk about quite a lot is social mobility issue. But it's one thing if you're hiring from a nice middle class family and they've got some young person has got a lovely place to work, or maybe slightly later in their career and they've got their garden office that they can work in, and that's all fine. But it's a little bit more tricky potentially
yeah,
for people from a different background who are in a small flat or flat sharing with friends. They've got no dedicated space to work at home. They wake up in their bedroom and then they got to work from their bedroom and then they go to
yeah,
sleep in their bedroom. And those kind of things, obviously they can't impact hiring decisions, but it would be easy for them too.
yes.
And so I guess it's just another sense where technology has changed the world around us, and there's lots of benefits for that. But there are also pitfalls. There are traps to fall
Yeah.
into, aren't there? Things we need to be aware of.
And this is where I think, and I see it, people are like, oh, I want a remote job and, I only want to work remote. Some people just should not work remotely. They should be in an office, whether it's hybrid or 5 days a week. A lot of these businesses are getting such a rap for going with 5 days back in the office. And I'd like to think they haven't made that decision just because they want to be mean. There's a good business reason. I've worked with people who really should not be working remotely, and people talk about work-life balance. Oh, I'm going to work remotely because I'll have work-life balance. Well, no, you won't. Not if you live and work in your bedroom. Where's the work-life balance? There's no separation. And I think that's when mental health becomes such a challenge because you are in these four walls. I'm at work 8 hours a day or however long you work. And then when I go home, my laptop is there. It's on all the time because technology allows us to be on all the time. But you then also don't leave your house. You don't go out. You don't go to the pub. You don't go to the park. And you're immediately on your screen talking to people on your screen. So, technology is great, but the way of working is not for everyone. And during our hiring processes, we try and identify whether people are suitable for 100% remote working. I've had candidates apply for the job and they say it's a really good job and they interview 100% remote, but we provide co-working memberships at spaces, which is great. And I use it 3, 4 times a week. It's wonderful. I get the whole office environment without the politics. Brilliant. But not everybody will use that. We're quite unique in that we've kept two offices, one down south and one in Manchester, to allow people to be able to go into the office if they want to, if they choose to. And we know we've got an employee who goes in 5 days a week. That's his choice. That's his
Mhm.
work-life balance. And I think that's really, really important. Remote working is great, but it's not all it's cracked up to be. Building those connections is really difficult. And in some cases, you might go, 12, 18 months before you actually meet your colleague face to face when we're at the Christmas party. And that's real
Yeah.
life. And that's where, leadership, line managers, that's when it becomes massively important for them to be navigating this new way of working. And, we want to collaborate, we want to work together, but how do we do this?
So I'm getting a sense then from you that you think one of the traits that a line manager or a leader needs to have is the ability to call people out. It's like
Yeah.
to maybe point out the fact that actually whether it's they're not automating their work properly or they're not doing the right training courses or they're not they need to go to the office once in a while because they're spending too much time at home. Are you saying that is part of the role of what good leadership in the modern workplace looks like?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've called that out. People who are in their homes for days because they're so busy, they're working on a project or whatever it is. And I'll call them up and say, get out. And I want to see a picture of you walking out somewhere, but get out of your house. And they do,
Mm.
and they do. It's easy to be focused and kind of get stuck in what you're doing, and then you get stuck in life and it becomes a habit. But yeah, absolutely, leaders should be given the permission that you can call this out. Because if somebody's not leaving their house, their productivity is potentially going to be impacted. Then we're going to have performance discussions. And then those performance discussions are going to talk about, well, I'm isolated and I'm stuck at home and all these other things that could have been avoided. Talking about your performance needs to be in the nicest possible way. Your performance sucks. These are the reasons why. And, this is the plan to improve it. And those outside factors should already have been dealt with. We shouldn't be dealing with those as soon as it comes to a performance conversation. It's going to be a difficult journey for leaders. We're talking about AI and what's the challenges of AI. But actually, I think one of the biggest things is the culture and giving our line managers and leadership the tools to be able to actually manage our employees.
Yeah. And I guess this is a concern. This is part of my concern, I think, is that as particularly when we see the rise of agents, and we talk about this kind of agentic computing landscape where you've got bots that have the ability to make decisions and do a whole bunch of professional services work that traditionally would not have been able to be done by bots. This is not just
Yeah.
automation. This is bots. I need to say people there. This is bots. Being given a prompt to solve with a bunch of tools and then just left to get on with it. And we're going to see this more and more and more. And there's going to be a sense where, as a leader, you're going to have a team which is made up of some people and made up of some bots. But your interaction with people is going to reduce because part of you may have had a team of 10 before. You've now got a team of 4.
Yeah.
And equally, your exposure to that as a junior to a mid, moving up to someone who might be in a people management type role is going to be reduced over time as well. So how do you provide that leadership training, that coaching, that and experience? Obviously, a huge part of it. You need the experience to go in and do it on the ground. You can't just read about leadership in a book. You've got to do it and do it wrong and learn from the mistakes. When those opportunities are diminishing, and there are less people to lead, because I know we don't really want to talk about it, but the workforce is going to reduce over time. There are going to be less jobs to do. So you're going to be dealing with less people. What does leadership even look like in that context? And how do you prepare people for it?
Hang on, I'm just going to ask ChatGPT. I think this is definitely a topic for a wider discussion because it is going to be real. But I think, yeah, that's a bigger topic on how do we support our leaders and leadership teams managing in a completely different world.
Yeah, I think there's maybe a sooner shift that's coming, a more prescient shift, is the way we measure success within our teams and within our individuals is going to change. I know a silly example. Maybe if you're an engineer, you're being judged on how many lines of code you can write in an hour. Well, I mean, we don't do that, but imagine you
Yeah,
could, right? That kind of metric is basically nonsensical in the new world. I
yeah,
mean, you're going to be outperformed by a bot, right? But that's no longer your value.
yeah,
So we need to come up with a new set of metrics that is able to measure the progress and the success that actually matters in the new world. And that sounds like you're saying that's linked to this sense of empathy, this ability to make complex ethical choices or
yeah,
nuanced decisions to enable the technology to excel at what the technology can do, scale and speed and automation and that kind of stuff, but fill the void which it currently can't do, which is that nuanced decision making, choosing option A over option B when option A isn't do more faster because there's something else going on, some other reason that
yeah.
you'd rather make a different choice. How are there metrics for that kind of thing, and how do we develop them?
I think we should develop them. I don't think there's metrics out there to measure that level of success, but it's an opportunity. It's definitely an opportunity for us. Do the next thing now.
Yeah, there's an
Let's do it.
opportunity to do the next thing now. Yeah, we want to rate you on how human you are. If you're a great human, you can come and work with us. That's what we need to do. Cool. Oh, this has been great. I mean, as you say, there are so many threads we can pull on here. I'm sure there's lots of broader conversations we can have. It's been really helpful. What do you think, and is the next thing now that we haven't talked about?
I think there's a few things. So I'm looking way into the future. What is there beyond AI? So once we've ridden this wave, in the next 10 years, are we going to be moving back to human functions? And some bots are going to disappear because people want more face-to-face or human interactions. It could be customer service, could be in the medical profession. But if we're talking about AI, I think some of the topics that we're not talking about is neurodivergence. AI can make things faster. Doesn't mean we should be working faster. But the problem with neurodiversity is these AI tools think in a certain way because we give it the input, we get input out. Are we being less inclusive by using AI tools that hasn't maybe evolved? Could unintentionally exclude neurodivergent people with the way that they think or communicate or, process things. And I think AI has still got some work to do to be able to catch up on that. But are we potentially excluding a group of people that could be helping us and, helping us on that AI journey and doing the next thing now? So I think that's definitely something nobody's talking about. And it's something we need to be considering.
Thank you very much, Ange. It's been a pleasure. Where can
Thank you,
people
Rob.
find out more about what you're doing and what you're up to? I know you're quite active on social media and you publish
Yeah.
various bits and bobs. So where can people find out about you?
I am on LinkedIn, and if you don't know which one I am, my title is Head of People, Culture, Warmth and Smiles. I also put there that I'm an HR ninja and an award-winning HR person. So yes, I'm on LinkedIn. If you really want to follow my boring stuff, I'm on Instagram as well, or via the Dutrix LinkedIn page, because I do post a lot of stuff there as well. Yes.
Thanks very much. Until next time.
Thanks.